Marcus Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching rain streak down the glass like tears he refused to shed. The city sprawled below him, thousands of lights piercing through the October gloom, each one representing a life less complicated than his own. "You have 30 days, Mr. Wellington." His grandfather's attorney had been brutally clear that morning. "Marry before your 34th birthday, or the entire Wellington fortune, stocks, properties, trusts, everything, transfers to various charities. Your grandfather's will contains no loopholes." Marcus pressed his forehead against the cool glass. 30 days to find a wife. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent years building his reputation as one of Manhattan's most eligible bachelors, carefully avoiding anything resembling commitment. His grandfather, even in death, had found a way to control him. His phone buzzed incessantly. Word had leaked naturally. Now every social climber in New York was circling like sharks, scenting blood in the water. 3 marriage proposals had arrived before lunch, each from women whose names he barely remembered from various charity galas and society functions. Marcus turned away from the window, loosening his tie. The office suddenly felt suffocating despite its generous size. He needed air, space, anything to clear his head from this nightmare. 23 floors below, in the building's catering kitchen, Nina Rodriguez wiped sweat from her forehead and tried to focus on arranging canapes. Her hands shook slightly as she worked, exhaustion and worry making even simple tasks feel overwhelming. "Nina, you okay?" Her co-worker Jamie touched her shoulder gently. "You've been spacing out all day." "I'm fine," Nina lied, forcing a smile. "Just tired." Tired didn't begin to cover it. She'd worked double shifts for 3 months straight, catering by day, cleaning offices by night, and still couldn't scratch the surface of what she owed. Liam's medical bills had grown into a mountain she couldn't possibly climb. The new treatment his specialist recommended would cost $200,000, and insurance would cover less than half. Her son was 7 years old, and shouldn't have to understand words like experimental treatment or clinical trial waiting list. But Liam was brave. Braver than Nina felt most days. Last week, he'd told her not to cry anymore, that everything would work out because she was the strongest person he knew. If only that were true. "Cover for me for 5 minutes?" Nina asked Jamie. "I need to make a call." Outside the kitchen, in the service corridor where staff took breaks, Nina dialed the hospital billing department. Her stomach churned as the phone rang. "Mrs. Rodriguez, we've been trying to reach you." The billing coordinator's voice was professional but firm. "We need to discuss payment arrangements for Liam's upcoming treatment." "I know, I'm sorry. I've been picking up extra work. I just need a little more time. The treatment is scheduled for next Thursday. Without a significant deposit, we'll have to postpone indefinitely. I understand your situation is difficult, but the hospital has policies." Nina's throat tightened. "How much do you need up front?" $50,000 by Monday. The corridor tilted. $50,000. She might as well have asked for the moon. "That's impossible. I work 2 jobs and I'm barely keeping us afloat. There has to be another way. Can't we set up a payment plan? I'll work more hours, I'll do anything." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rodriguez. Without collateral or a co-signer, we can't extend that kind of credit. Perhaps you have family who could help." Nina's eyes burned with tears. Her parents had passed away years ago. Liam's father had disappeared before their son was born. She had Rosa, her best friend, but Rosa was a single mother herself, barely scraping by. "Please," Nina whispered, her voice breaking. "He's just a little boy. He deserves a chance. I truly am sorry. If your situation changes, please call us back immediately." The line went dead. Nina slid down the wall, pulling her knees to her chest, trying desperately to muffle the sobs that wanted to escape. She couldn't fall apart here. She couldn't afford to lose this job. But the weight of everything, the bills, the fear, the helplessness, crushed down on her. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching until a shadow fell across her. "Are you all right?" Nina looked up, hastily wiping her eyes. Her heart nearly stopped. Marcus Wellington stood 3 feet away, concern etching lines into his normally composed face. She'd seen him dozens of times, of course, had served canapes at his business dinners, cleaned his office after hours, but he'd never actually looked at her. People like Marcus Wellington didn't see people like her. I'm fine, Mr. Wellington. She scrambled to her feet, mortified. I apologize. I was just taking a break. I'll get back to work immediately. You were crying. It wasn't a question. He studied her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. I overheard some of your conversation. Your son needs medical treatment? Heat flooded Nina's cheeks. That's personal, sir. It won't affect my work performance. How much do you need? The question caught her completely off guard. Excuse me? The medical treatment. How much does it cost? Nina stared at him, wondering if exhaustion had finally broken her brain. I don't understand why you're asking. Marcus's jaw tightened, and for a moment something vulnerable flickered across his features before the businessman's mask slammed back into place. Because I have a proposition that could solve both our problems. Both our problems? Nina repeated slowly. Mr. Wellington, I don't think we have the same kinds of problems. More similar than you might think. He glanced down the corridor, then back at her. This isn't the place for this conversation. Can you meet me in conference room C in 20 minutes? I promise I'm not going to proposition you in any inappropriate way. This is strictly business. Every instinct screamed that this was insane. Rich men didn't pull random catering staff aside to discuss business propositions. But then she thought of Liam, of the treatment he desperately needed, of the hospital's ultimatum. 20 minutes, she agreed. Marcus nodded and walked away, leaving Nina trembling in the corridor. She had no idea what he wanted, but desperation made people consider impossible things. 19 minutes later, Nina stood outside conference room C, her hand raised to knock. Through the glass door, she could see Marcus sitting at the massive table, papers spread before him. He looked alone, despite the expensive suit and powerful bearing. Lonely, even. She knocked. Come in. He stood as she entered, gesturing to a chair. Please, sit. Nina perched on the edge of the seat, her catering uniform feeling shabby against the leather chairs and polished wood. Mr. Wellington, I appreciate whatever you're trying to do, but I need a wife. The words hung in the air between them. Nina blinked, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? I need a wife, Marcus repeated, his voice steady despite the absurdity of the statement. For 6 months. It's complicated, but the short version is that my grandfather's will requires me to be married before my 34th birthday, or I lose everything. I have 30 days. Nina's mind reeled. And you're telling me this because? Because I'm offering you a business arrangement. He slid a folder across the table. Marry me for 6 months. In exchange, I'll pay for your son's medical treatment in full, all costs, no limits, plus $200,000 when the marriage ends. Nina opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were medical payment forms, a preliminary contract, and what looked like a cashier's check already made out for $50,000. This is insane, she whispered. Is it more insane than watching your son suffer because you can't afford to save him? The words cut deep because they were true. Nina looked up at this stranger who somehow held her son's life in his hands. Why me? You could have anyone. Because you're real, Marcus said quietly. Every woman I know would see dollar signs and future opportunities. You'll see a contract with an end date. That's exactly what I need. What would this marriage involve? Public appearances, some social events, living in my penthouse. To the world, we'd be married. Privately, separate lives, separate rooms, no personal complications. When 6 months end, we divorce quietly, and you walk away with enough money to secure your son's future. Nina's head spun. I need time to think. Your son's treatment is scheduled for Thursday. The hospital needs $50,000 by Monday. Marcus stood and walked to the window, his back to her. I'm not trying to pressure you, Nina. But time is something neither of us has much of. She looked down at the check again. $50,000. Liam's treatment. A chance at a real life without drowning in debt. All she had to do was marry a stranger and play pretend for 6 months. If I agree, Nina said slowly, I have conditions. Marcus turned, something like respect flickering in his eyes. I'd expect nothing less. Liam comes first, always. If he needs me, contract or no contract, I go to him. Agreed. I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm a catering worker from Queens. I can't suddenly become some sophisticated socialite. I don't want you to. Authenticity is what makes this work. Nina stood, her legs unsteady. When this is over, we walk away. No complications, no strings, no regrets. Marcus crossed the room, extending his hand. No complications. Nina stared at his offered hand. This was madness. Absolute madness. But when she thought of Liam's smile, of giving him a fighting chance, the choice became clear. She shook his hand. I'll need to see a lawyer before signing anything. I'd insist on it, Marcus said. I'll have my attorney recommend someone independent who can review everything. As Nina left the conference room, her mind raced with everything that had just happened. In 72 hours, she would become Mrs. Marcus Wellington. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, all she could think about was calling Liam to tell him the treatment was happening. Sometimes miracles came in the strangest packages. The courthouse wedding felt like something happening to someone else. Nina stood in a borrowed dove-gray dress that Rosa had insisted made her look elegant, watching Marcus sign their marriage certificate with bold, confident strokes. His charcoal suit probably cost more than her entire year's rent. You may now kiss the bride, Judge Patterson announced with a warm smile, clearly believing this was a genuine love story. Marcus turned to Nina, his eyes asking permission. She gave the smallest nod, and he leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. To anyone watching, it looked tender and sweet. Only Nina felt the careful distance he maintained, the way his hand barely touched her waist. Mrs. Wellington, he murmured, as they turned to face the handful of witnesses. His attorney, her friend Rosa, and the court staff, Mrs. Wellington. The name felt foreign, like borrowed clothing that didn't quite fit. Rosa hugged her fiercely afterward in the courthouse hallway. Are you absolutely sure about this? She whispered. It's not too late to run. Nina glanced at Marcus, who was speaking quietly with his attorney about paperwork. Liam's treatment starts tomorrow. I'm sure. But Nina, 6 months living with a stranger, will be fine. It's just business. Even as she said it, Nina wondered who she was trying to convince. The penthouse stole Nina's breath. 43rd floor, wraparound windows showcasing Manhattan like a glittering toy city. The entryway alone was larger than her entire Queens apartment. Marble floors reflected recessed lighting, and modern art decorated walls that seemed to stretch endlessly. Your suite is this way, Marcus said, his tone professionally polite. He led her down a hallway past rooms she couldn't begin to name. Master bedroom is on the opposite side of the penthouse. You'll have complete privacy. He opened double doors to reveal what he called a suite, but looked more like a luxury hotel. Bedroom, sitting room, walk-in closet, and bathroom with a soaking tub that could fit 3 people. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views that made her dizzy. The staff knows about our arrangement, Marcus continued. Well, not the truth, obviously. They believe we're married. Elena comes 3 times a week for housekeeping. Chef Thomas can prepare meals if you'd like, or you're welcome to use the kitchen yourself. Nina turned to face him, overwhelmed. Marcus, this is too much. I don't need, you're my wife now. This is what my wife should have. Something in his voice made her look closer. Was that defensiveness? Embarrassment? For 6 months, she reminded him gently. Right. 6 months. He moved toward the door, then paused. Liam's treatment is at 9 tomorrow morning. I've arranged for a car to take you both. The hospital has all the financial information they need. You don't have to come, Nina said quickly. I know you have work. I'll be there. He left before she could respond. The doors closing with a soft click that somehow felt very loud. Nina sank onto the bed, impossibly soft. Probably cost more than her car, and pulled out her phone. Liam was with Rosa tonight, and she needed to hear his voice. Mama! His excitement made her chest ache. Rosa's letting me stay up late. We're watching the movie with the talking cars. That sounds perfect, mi amor. Tomorrow's a big day. Are you nervous? A little. But you said the doctors are going to make me better, right? Right, baby. I promise. After they hung up, Nina lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd just married a stranger. Moved into a penthouse. stepped into a life so far removed from her own reality that it felt like a dream, or possibly a very elaborate trap. The next morning, Marcus was waiting in the living room when Nina emerged at 7:30. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, the most casual she'd ever seen him, and held 2 travel mugs of coffee. "Thought you might need this?" he said, offering her one. The gesture surprised her. "Thank you." They rode to pick up Liam in comfortable silence. Marcus's car was understated compared to what Nina expected, a dark sedan, elegant but not ostentatious. When they arrived at Rosa's building, Liam bounded out, then stopped short seeing Marcus. "Who's that?" he whispered loudly to Nina. Nina crouched to his level. "This is Marcus. He's going to be around for a while. He's helping us with your treatment." Liam studied Marcus with the solemn intensity only 7-year-olds could manage. "Are you Mama's boyfriend?" "Something like that," Marcus said, surprising Nina by crouching too, meeting Liam at eye level. "I hear you're pretty brave. Mama says I'm the bravest boy she knows. I believe it." "Ready to show those doctors how brave you are?" Liam nodded, slipping his small hand into Nina's. As they walked to the car, he reached out and grabbed Marcus's hand too. Nina's breath caught, but Marcus simply adjusted his grip. Holding Liam's hand securely, they looked for all the world like a family. The treatment went smoothly, though watching Liam hooked up to machines made Nina's stomach churn. Marcus stayed the entire 4 hours, working on his laptop in the waiting room, but looking up every time Nina emerged with updates. "He's doing great," she reported after the 3rd hour, collapsing into the chair beside him. "Sleeping now. They said that's normal. You should eat something." Marcus pulled a protein bar from his bag. "You've been running on coffee and adrenaline." Nina accepted it, too tired to argue. "You didn't have to stay. I'm sure you have important meetings or whatever it is billionaires do on Wednesdays." I rescheduled. He closed his laptop, turning to face her fully. "Nina, I know this situation is strange, but for the next 6 months, we're partners. That means I'm here for the important things." "Partners," Nina repeated softly. "Is that what we are? Unless you'd prefer different terminology?" She almost smiled. "Partners works." When Liam woke up, groggy but smiling, Marcus surprised them both by producing a stuffed dinosaur from his bag. "Thought you might want company during recovery." Liam's eyes lit up. "A T-Rex! Mama, look, it's a T-Rex!" "What do you say, Liam?" "Thank you, Marcus." Liam hugged the dinosaur, then, without warning, lunged forward to hug Marcus, too. Nina watched Marcus's face cycle through surprise, uncertainty, and finally something that looked almost like wonder, as he carefully hugged Liam back. On the drive home, Liam fell asleep in his car seat, clutching his dinosaur. Nina turned to Marcus. "That was kind of you." "The dinosaur. Every kid should have something to hold on to in hospitals. There was a story there," Nina sensed, but didn't push. Their first real test came 3 days later. Marcus's sister Victoria arrived at the penthouse unannounced, sweeping in like a hurricane in designer heels. "Let me see her," Victoria demanded, spotting Nina in the kitchen. She was stunning, Marcus's same dark hair and sharp cheekbones, but with an intensity that felt aggressive. "Oh my God, Marcus actually got married. I had to see this with my own eyes." "Victoria, this is Nina. Nina, my sister Victoria." "The housekeeper," Victoria said, not bothering to hide her assessment. "Word travels fast in our circles." "You worked here, didn't you?" "Catering?" Nina lifted her chin. "Yes, I did. And now you're what, lady of the manor?" Victoria laughed, but it wasn't kind. "This should be entertaining." "Victoria," Marcus's voice held warning. "What?" "I'm just stating facts." "Come on, Marcus, even you have to admit this is bizarre. A month ago, she was serving your guests. Now she's wearing your ring?" Victoria grabbed Nina's hand, examining the simple wedding band. "Modest choice." "Nina chose it," Marcus said firmly. "And that's the end of this conversation. I'm just looking out for you, big brother. You've been burned before." After Victoria left, thankfully for a business trip to London, Nina found Marcus on the terrace, jaw tight with anger. "I'm sorry about her," he said without turning around. "Victoria is protective. In her own terrible way. She's not wrong, though." Nina joined him at the railing. "This is bizarre. I was serving canapes at your event 6 weeks ago. Now I'm supposed to be your wife. Does it bother you? What people think? Nina considered the question. It bothers me that people assume I'm a gold digger. But I guess that's part of the deal, right? Part of what you're paying me for. Marcus flinched slightly. Nina, it's okay. It's the truth. We should probably establish some rules. Make this easier. They spent the next hour on the terrace establishing boundaries. Separate schedules. No expectations of companionship beyond public appearances. Space and privacy respected at all times. No personal questions, Marcus added. We don't need to know each other's life stories. Agreed, Nina said, though part of her wondered why that condition felt like a loss. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Marcus left early for work, returned late. Nina spent her days with Liam during his recovery, exploring the city in ways she'd never had time for before. No more double shifts, no more exhaustion so deep she could barely stand. But sometimes, she'd find coffee waiting for her in the morning with a note. Thought you might need this, M. Or she'd leave dinner in the warming oven for Marcus when he worked late. And he'd text, You didn't have to do that. But thank you. Small gestures that felt larger than they should. The business gala arrived faster than Nina expected. Marcus had sent stylists who transformed her into someone she barely recognized. The sapphire blue dress hugged her curves, and professional makeup highlighted features she'd always considered ordinary. You look beautiful, Marcus said when she emerged, and something in his voice sounded less like politeness and more like truth. You clean up okay yourself, Nina managed, though okay was a massive understatement. Marcus in a tuxedo should be illegal. The gala was overwhelming. Hundreds of people in clothes that cost more than cars discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes. Nina felt like an imposter, certain everyone could see through her. Relax, Marcus whispered, his hand warm on her lower back. Just be yourself. Myself doesn't belong here. You're exactly where you belong. They navigated the crowd, Marcus introducing her to business partners and society figures. Nina shook hands and smiled until her face hurt, grateful when they finally reached their table. Then she saw her. Cassandra Whitmore was everything Nina wasn't. Blonde, polished, born into old money. She glided toward their table with practiced grace, her smile sharp as glass. Marcus, darling, I heard the most ridiculous rumor that you'd gotten married. Her eyes swept over Nina dismissively. Oh, I guess it wasn't a rumor, Cassandra. Marcus's voice cooled noticeably. This is my wife, Nina. How unexpected. Cassandra's smile never wavered. Marcus and I have such history. We were engaged once, you know. Nina's heart dropped, but she kept her expression neutral. Marcus mentioned he'd dated before? Dated? Sweetie, we were planning our wedding. 6 years together. I know Marcus better than anyone. Cassandra leaned closer, her perfume cloying. I know exactly what he needs in a partner. Education, breeding, the right connections. No offense, but you seem a bit out of your depth. That's enough, Marcus stood, his fury barely contained. Nina is my wife. You need to leave. Oh, Marcus, still so protective. How long until you realize this little experiment isn't working? Cassandra drifted away, leaving poison in her wake. Nina excused herself, needing air. She found a balcony overlooking the city, her hands shaking. Marcus found her minutes later. Nina, she's right, isn't she? I don't belong in your world. I'm a catering worker playing dress-up. No! Marcus moved closer, his voice fierce. Cassandra is bitter because I ended our engagement when I realized she only cared about my money and status. You're nothing like her. I'm taking your money too, for your son's medical care, not for designer bags and society status. He hesitated, then continued. Cassandra never asked about my day, never cared if I was tired or stressed. You leave me coffee in the morning and dinner when I work late. You see me, Nina? That's more real than 6 years with her ever was. Nina looked up at him, seeing something raw and honest in his expression. The space between them felt charged with possibility. We should go back inside, she whispered, or we could stay here, away from everyone else. They stood together on the balcony, the city spreading out below them, neither quite ready to name what was shifting between them. Life in the penthouse developed an unexpected pattern. Nina would wake to find Marcus already gone, but a fresh pot of coffee waiting with increasingly elaborate breakfast arrangements. First just coffee, then pastries, then full breakfast plates that appeared courtesy of Chef Thomas, though Nina suspected Marcus was behind the orders. She retaliated by learning his schedule and ensuring he actually ate lunch. Marcus had a tendency to work through meals, surviving on coffee and determination. Nina started appearing at his home office around noon with sandwiches, fruit, anything to make sure he didn't collapse from exhaustion. "You're worse than my assistant," Marcus grumbled one afternoon. "But he ate the turkey sandwich she'd brought. Your assistant lets you skip meals. I have a 7-year-old to practice on. I know all the tricks." Liam's recovery was progressing beautifully. The treatment had been successful, and his energy was returning. Nina had expected to feel restless in the penthouse, trapped in a gilded cage, but instead found herself settling into a life she'd never imagined possible. No more exhaustion from double shifts. No more panic attacks over bills. No more choosing between groceries and medical copays. For the first time in years, she could breathe. "Mama, can Marcus play basketball with me?" Liam asked one Saturday morning, holding up the new basketball Marcus had given him. Nina glanced at Marcus's office, where he'd been working since dawn. "He's busy, mi amor. How about we go to the park? I heard my name." Marcus emerged, still in pajama pants and a t-shirt. Casual Marcus was becoming Nina's favorite version. "Did someone say basketball?" Liam's face lit up. "Will you play with me, please? Let me get changed." Nina watched them in the building's private gymnasium, Marcus patiently teaching Liam to dribble and shoot. Her son's laughter echoed off the walls, and something in Nina's chest ached. Liam had never had this. A father figure who paid attention, who cared. "Your husband is good with him," Elena, the housekeeper, said quietly. She'd come to deliver fresh towels. "Mr. Wellington has changed since you arrived. Smiles more. Seems less alone. We're just helping each other out," Nina said automatically. Elena's knowing look suggested she saw right through that lie. That evening, Nina discovered Marcus's secret by accident. She'd been looking for a book in his study and found a leather journal tucked between business texts. It fell open when she picked it up, revealing pages of handwritten poetry, beautiful, aching poetry about loneliness and searching for meaning beyond money and success. The words were raw, vulnerable, nothing like the controlled businessmen she knew. "Those are private," Nina jumped, dropping the journal. Marcus stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I'm sorry. I wasn't snooping, it just fell open." She bent to retrieve it. But Marcus got there first. "I should have locked the drawer," he said, his voice tight. "Marcus, those were beautiful. Really beautiful. I didn't know you wrote. No one does." He turned away, shoulders tense. "It's not something I share." "Why not?" "You have real talent." "Because Marcus Wellington, investment banker and heir to a fortune, doesn't write poetry. It doesn't fit the image." Nina understood then. The carefully constructed walls, the distance he maintained. Marcus had spent so long being what others expected that he'd forgotten who he actually was. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I prefer the Marcus who writes poetry to the one who just makes money." He looked at her then, something shifting in his expression. "Nina!" Liam burst into the study, breathless with excitement. "Mama, Marcus! The pizza's here! Can we watch a movie?" The moment shattered. But Nina caught Marcus's small smile as Liam grabbed both their hands and dragged them toward the living room. They fell into an evening routine after that, pizza or takeout. Marcus's eating habits were terrible. Movies with Liam. Then quiet conversations after her son went to bed. They'd sit on the terrace with wine or coffee, talking about everything except the contract counting down between them. Nina learned that Marcus had started his company at 25 with nothing but a business plan and determination, that his parents had expected him to fail, to come crawling back to manage the family's existing investments. That proving them wrong had been his driving force for years. But then what? Nina asked one night, stars barely visible through Manhattan's light pollution. After you proved yourself, what kept you going? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, nothing. It became empty. Just making more money to make more money. I was successful and completely hollow. Is that why you didn't fight your grandfather's will? You could have contested it. Maybe part of me wanted the choice made for me. A reason to change things. He glanced at her. Though I never expected this. This? You, Liam. Feeling like maybe life could be about more than quarterly earnings. Nina's heart skipped, but she kept her voice light. Careful, Marcus. That sounds dangerously close to getting personal. Heaven forbid, he replied, but he was smiling. The charity auction 3 weeks into their marriage tested their growing connection. It was a massive event, hundreds of wealthy donors, live entertainment, items ranging from exotic vacations to private concerts. Nina wore an emerald dress that Marcus had selected, and he couldn't seem to stop looking at her. You're staring, Nina whispered as they found their table. You're beautiful, he replied simply. Before Nina could respond, a familiar voice called out. Marcus Wellington! Haven't seen you at one of these in months! Julian Fontaine approached with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. He was Marcus's business partner, Nina learned, and currently running for city council. Tall, polished, with politician's smile that didn't reach his eyes. Julian, this is my wife, Nina. The famous Nina! Julian's handshake lasted too long. Marcus has been keeping you hidden away. Can't imagine why. You're absolutely stunning. Something about Julian made Nina's skin crawl, but she smiled politely. Nice to meet you. I have to say, Marcus, when I heard you'd gotten married so suddenly, I had concerns. Business partners should be transparent with each other. Julian's tone was light, but there was steel underneath. Then I thought surely Marcus wouldn't do something impulsive. There must be a logical reason. Love isn't always logical, Marcus said evenly. Love, of course. How romantic. Julian's eyes assessed Nina like she was a stock portfolio, though I imagine the timing with your grandfather's will was quite fortunate. What are the odds, meeting your soulmate right when you needed a wife? Nina felt Marcus tense beside her. Sometimes fortune favors the fortunate, she said smoothly. Though I like to think we'd have found each other eventually, inheritance or not. I'm sure. Julian smiled that empty smile again. Well, congratulations to you both. I'll be watching with great interest to see how this develops. After he left, Marcus exhaled slowly. I'm sorry. Julian is suspicious, Nina finished. He doesn't believe we're really married. No, he doesn't. Does it matter? Marcus looked at her, something complicated in his expression. 6 months ago, I would have said no. Now, I'm not sure. The auction proceeded with absurd displays of wealth, people bidding thousands for wine baskets and weekend getaways. Nina watched, fascinated and slightly horrified by the casual way these people threw around money that could change lives. Then Lot 43 appeared, a day with Marcus Wellington, investment advice, business mentoring, or simply his company. Nina turned to Marcus. You donated yourself? The charity insisted. I usually just write a check, but they wanted something more personal this year. The bidding started at $5,000. Within minutes, it hit $20,000. Nina watched women around the room bid aggressively, clearly more interested in Marcus's company than his business advice. Cassandra Whitmore raised her paddle. $30,000. Something fierce and possessive surged through Nina. Before she could think better of it, she raised her own paddle. $40,000. Marcus stared at her. Nina, what are you doing? Bidding on my husband. $50,000, Cassandra countered, her smile predatory. $75,000, Nina said firmly. The room buzzed with excitement. This was apparently the most entertainment they'd had all evening. 2 women battling over Marcus Wellington. $100,000, Cassandra declared. Nina's heart pounded. That was an insane amount of money even for charity. But the thought of Cassandra spending a day with Marcus, flaunting it, maybe making him question his choice. $150,000, Nina heard herself say. Marcus grabbed her hand. Nina, stop! That's too much. It's for charity, she whispered back. And she's not winning! Cassandra glared across the room but stayed silent. The auctioneer called once, twice, 3 times. Sold! To Mrs. Wellington for $150,000. Applause erupted. Marcus looked stunned. Nina felt slightly sick. She'd just spent a fortune, Marcus's fortune technically, on a symbolic gesture of, what exactly? Possession? Jealousy? That was insane, Marcus said as they left the event later. You didn't have to do that. I know. I couldn't stand the thought of her winning. They stood by the car, the city alive around them. Marcus stepped closer, his voice low. Nina, what are we doing here? What do you mean? You know what I mean? This started as a business arrangement, but it's becoming something else. Nina's pulse raced. Marcus, I think about you constantly. Wonder what you're doing when I'm at work. Come home early just to see you. That's not business. We agreed. No complications. I know what we agreed. But somewhere between coffee in the morning and watching you with my son, your son, Liam? He caught himself. Somewhere along the way, this stopped being pretend. Nina couldn't breathe. Everything she'd been trying not to feel suddenly rushed to the surface. We have 3 more months on the contract. Forget the contract. Tell me I'm not imagining this. Tell me you feel it too. She should say no. Should maintain the boundaries they'd established. But standing here in the Manhattan night with Marcus looking at her like she was something precious, Nina couldn't lie. I feel it, she whispered. God help me, I feel it. Marcus closed the distance between them, his hand cupping her face gently. Can I kiss you? For real this time, not for show? Nina nodded, and when his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, then deeper as weeks of tension released. Nina's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and Marcus made a sound low in his throat that sent heat racing through her. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. This changes everything, he said. I know. The contract is just paper. But Marcus, we need to be smart about this. Liam is involved now. If this goes wrong, it won't. He sounded so certain. Nina, I know this started as a business deal. But what I feel for you is the most real thing in my life. They stood there, holding each other under Manhattan's indifferent stars, and Nina let herself hope that maybe, just maybe, their pretend marriage could become something true. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered warnings. Contracts ended. Fairy tales weren't real. And men like Marcus Wellington didn't actually fall for women like her.